Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping into a city that never truly slept, because sleep itself was something you had to survive. We're traveling to 1700s Edinburgh, a place where people lived stacked 10 stories high in stone towers, where darkness swallowed the streets after sunset, and where survival depended on knowing when to walk, when to listen, and when to stay hidden. You'll wander through smoke-filled closes, follow lantern light through absolute night, share warmth in crowded taverns, and finally retreat into a wooden box bed designed to protect you from cold, noise, and fear itself. This is not the romantic past. This is everyday life, slow, heavy, and quietly dangerous, told softly enough to help you rest. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let the noise of the modern world fade, and imagine the sound of stone beneath your feet as night falls over old Edinburgh. Imagine opening your eyes, not at street level, but suspended 6 stories above the ground. Inside what might feel like the world's first skyscraper, built not of glass and steel, but of stone, soot, and centuries of breath. A pale gray light slips through a narrow window, barely wider than your shoulders, carrying with it the faint smell of damp stone and distant smoke. You are wrapped in a coarse wool blanket, its fibers itchy against your skin, never soft enough to let you forget where you are. This is Edinburgh in the year 1750, and survival here begins not with food or fire, but with understanding height. You do not live in a low wooden house tucked behind a fence. You live in a close, one of the towering stone tenements of old Edinburgh, rising 10, sometimes 14 stories high, stacked tightly together like uneven teeth along the spine of the hill. These 18th century tenements are not symbols of luxury. They are necessities, shaped by geography, poverty, and a city that refuses to spread outward. Far below you lies the street, narrow and dark, already alive with footsteps, carts, and voices you cannot quite make out. Above you, there is almost nothing, only more stone and more lives stacked vertically toward the clouds. In this city, living in old Edinburgh means life does not spread outward, it climbs. The wind whistles through chimneys, slipping between buildings, carrying whispers of last night's fires and the promise of another cold day. Somewhere below, someone coughs. Somewhere above, a floorboard creaks. You are never truly alone here, even when the room feels silent. This is the first lesson of surviving life in 1700s Edinburgh. Privacy does not exist. In these towering tenements, the wealthy and the poor live within the same walls, separated not by address, but by altitude. The middle floors belong to merchants and professionals, where the air is cleaner and the climb still reasonable. The lowest floors endure noise and dampness from the street. The highest floors, where you awaken now, are claimed by students, laborers, widows, and those whose legs are strong but whose purses are light. Every morning begins with a quiet calculation. How many steps stand between you and bread today? How many times will your body travel up and down before nightfall? In the closes of Edinburgh, survival is measured not only in coins, but in stairs climbed,
lungs strained and balance maintained. As you lie there, listening, breathing, learning the rhythm of a city that grows upward instead of outward, you realize this is not yet danger, but it is the beginning. To survive living in 1700s Edinburgh, you must first understand where you stand in this vertical world of stone.
Before you even rise from the mattress, your body remembers what your mind tries to ignore. Your legs feel heavy, not from age, but from repetition. In the lands of old Edinburgh, every movement begins with stairs. They are narrow, uneven, worn smooth by generations of feet, spiraling upward through stone like a spine. There is no railing you fully trust, no window to soften the climb, only the slow rhythm of ascent and descent. This is the unseen cost of living in 18th century tenements. From above, height feels like protection from noise and filth. From within, it feels like work. You place your feet on the cold stone floor and breathe in air thick with the presence of many lives sharing the same vertical space. Somewhere below, a door opens, voices follow, and footsteps echo upward. Sound does not travel politely here, it climbs. Every cough, argument, and laugh drifts through the stairwell, collecting as it rises. To live in old Edinburgh is to live inside a shared lung. You dress slowly, layering wool upon wool, knowing the cold follows you everywhere. When you open your door, the stairwell greets you, not with light, but with smell. Smoke from cooking fires, damp stones soaked with years of moisture, and the unmistakable presence of crowded human life. Survival here requires more than strength. It requires pacing. You learn not to rush the stairs. You pause not from weakness, but from wisdom, because breath is currency in this city. Each step downward brings you closer to the street, where life moves faster and less forgiving. By the time you reach the lower levels, the air grows heavier and the sounds sharper. Carts scrape stone, vendors call out prices. The narrow street waits, ready to test your balance once again. You begin to understand that height both protects and taxes you. Living in old Edinburgh is a negotiation between distance and effort. Those who live higher pay with lungs and legs. Those who live lower pay with noise and dampness. And somewhere between them, the city breathes steadily through stone corridors and shared stairways. As you step fully into the day, you realize surviving 1700s Edinburgh is not about avoiding hardship, but learning how to move within it, one stair at a time. As the morning settles fully into the city, you begin to notice something quietly unusual about life inside these towering 18th century tenements. The walls around you do not separate wealth from poverty the way modern streets do. They simply stack it. Within the same stone shell, lives of vastly different means unfold side by side, one above another, sharing stairways, sounds, and air. This is what living in old Edinburgh truly means. A merchant descends past you on the stairs, his coat cleaner, his steps confident but measured, while above, a student coughs into a thin blanket, counting coins before daring to leave the room. The building does not judge, it only holds. In these lands, survival is not a private struggle, but a shared condition. You hear it in the floorboards, worn thin by centuries of movement, carrying the weight of both silk shoes and bare feet. You smell it in the stairwell, where fine perfumes mingle with smoke and damp wool, forming a scent that belongs to no single class. The wealthy do not escape the presence of the poor, and the poor cannot avoid glimpses of comfort above or below them. This closeness shapes behavior. Conversations soften on the stairs.
eyes lower in passing. Everyone understands that noise travels upward and downward without mercy. A late argument on a lower floor disturbs sleep far above. A dropped object from the heights can echo through the entire building. Over time, you learn restraint not as politeness, but as survival. In old Edinburgh, patience is not virtue, it is necessity. You pause on landings to let others pass, not knowing if they carry news, bread, or nothing at all. You share space with strangers whose lives you will never fully know, yet whose presence you feel constantly. This creates a strange equality, not of wealth, but of exposure. No one is fully hidden here. The city presses its residents together, forcing awareness without intimacy. And in this awareness, people adapt. You begin to understand faces without names, footsteps without voices. You recognize the rhythm of certain families, the slow tread of age, the hurried descent of those late for work. This is how survival quietly works in 1700s Edinburgh, not through confrontation, but through observation. The stone buildings teach you when to move, when to wait, when to remain silent. By midday, the stairwell grows warmer from constant use, the air thickened by bodies returning and leaving. Light shifts across the narrow windows, briefly illuminating carved initials in the stone, left by hands long gone. These marks remind you that your presence here is temporary, just another layer in a vertical history. Living in old Edinburgh means accepting that your life is one of many compressed into a narrow space, and that survival depends on learning the patterns rather than resisting them. By evening, when you climb once more toward your high room, legs aching but steady, you carry with you the quiet understanding that these shared walls have shaped you. They have taught you caution, awareness, and endurance. And as you close your door against the growing night, you realize that surviving life in 1700s Edinburgh is not about rising above others, but learning how to exist among them, stacked together, breathing the same air, under the same stone sky.
Before you step outside, you listen, not out of curiosity, but out of instinct. In 1700s Edinburgh, the morning ritual begins with sound rather than sight, because one specific cry from the street below can mean the difference between a clean start to the day and a very unpleasant accident. The city has already woken long before you. By 7 o'clock, the worst of the night has passed. This hour is considered safe, not because the streets are clean, but because the danger has already fallen. Hours earlier, late in the evening, the narrow closes and wynds echoed with a warning passed down through habit rather than law. Gardyloo. The phrase drifts up through the stone corridors, half French, half survival instinct, meaning simply, watch out for the water. This is not water as you know it. It is waste, carried from chamber pots and household buckets, emptied from windows into the street below. Understanding the Gardyloo meaning is essential to surviving daily life here. It is not shouted to shock or embarrass, but to protect. It is a shared signal in a city that has no modern sanitation, only cooperation and timing. Now, in the quiet gray of morning, that danger has passed. The street sweepers have already worked, scraping and rinsing what they can, long before the city truly begins to move. This is sanitation in history as it actually functioned: imperfect, physical, and dependent on routine rather than infrastructure. You open your door and step into the stairwell, where the spiral drops away into shadow. The stone beneath your feet is slick in places,
polished smooth by centuries of boots and bare soles. As you descend, the smells of the city rise to meet you, not as a single offense, but as layers. Coal smoke from early fires, the salt of the nearby sea carried on the wind, and the unmistakable presence of a city built upward beyond its limits. This is hygiene in the 1700s, not as theory, but as lived experience. Cleanliness is relative, defined by timing and awareness rather than running water. You learn quickly where to place your feet, when to pause, and when to look up. Looking up is not superstition, it is strategy. Windows above frame slices of sky and stone, each one a potential source of danger if approached at the wrong hour. The city teaches you caution without speaking. As you reach the lower levels, the light changes, turning yellow and thin as it slips between buildings. The street waits, damp and narrow, marked by yesterday's life and this morning's labor. You step out carefully, senses alert but calm. This is how survival works here, not through fear, but through ritual. The people around you move with the same quiet knowledge. Heads tilt upward briefly. Footsteps hesitate, then continue. No one rushes. In old Edinburgh, the morning belongs to those who understand the rhythm of waste and warning, of night and morning. The cry of Gardyloo has faded, but its lesson remains. Survival here is not about avoiding what is unpleasant. It is about knowing when it will fall and when it will not. As the city settles into its day, carts begin to roll, vendors prepare their goods, and life resumes its vertical climb. You blend into the movement, carrying with you an understanding passed not through books, but through sound, habit, and shared awareness. This is the first hygiene lesson of 1700s Edinburgh. Listen before you step, and you will live to walk another day.
As the day unfolds, you begin to understand that cleanliness in 1700s Edinburgh is governed less by laws and more by unspoken agreements. There are no posted rules, no official schedules carved into stone, yet everyone seems to know when to move, when to wait, and when to stay inside. This is sanitation in history at its most human. The city does not promise comfort, only predictability. You learn that the night belongs to release and the morning belongs to repair. Waste is never ignored, only postponed to the hours when warning can travel faster than impact. The cry of Gardyloo is not merely a shout, but a reminder that survival depends on listening as much as acting. Even during the day, habits formed by night persist. People keep close to walls, not out of fear, but from experience. Doors open carefully, windows are approached with caution. Hygiene in the 1700s Edinburgh is not about removing filth entirely, but about minimizing surprise. As you walk the streets, you notice small adaptations everywhere. Shoes are thick and worn, not for fashion, but protection. Cloaks hang low, shielding fabric from splashes that never fully disappear. Water is poured deliberately, never wasted, because every bucket carried upstairs must also be carried down. This physical cost shapes behavior. The city teaches efficiency through exhaustion. You begin to see that living in old Edinburgh requires mental adjustment as much as physical endurance. You do not dwell on what the streets carry. You accept it, the way you accept weather. Disgust fades into background awareness, replaced by rhythm. By midday, the streets are busy but calmer, layered with the memory of what has already passed. Vendors arrange goods atop cloths, careful to elevate food away from stone. Children learn early where not to step. This knowledge is passed quietly from parent to child, neighbor to neighbor. There is no shame in it. It is simply how one lives here.
Sanitation in history often sounds primitive when told loudly, but experienced quietly, it becomes routine. The human mind adapts faster than stone ever could. You find yourself moving without conscious thought, stepping around darker patches, choosing paths worn lighter by traffic. The city feels alive, not hostile. By afternoon, the air shifts again, carrying less sharpness, more smoke, more cooking smells. The cycle prepares to repeat. As evening approaches, subtle changes signal what is coming. Windows close, voices soften, buckets are filled discreetly. The unwritten rules return to the forefront of thought. You understand now that the true danger is not waste itself, but forgetting when it falls. Those who survive longest are not the strongest, but the most attentive. Hygiene in 1700s Edinburgh is a shared discipline, enforced not by punishment, but by consequence. And so, as night draws near, you retreat inward, aware that the city is preparing for another release, another warning, another reset. This is how life continues in vertical stone. Not clean by modern standards, but ordered enough to endure. To survive here is to respect timing, to trust ritual, and to accept that even discomfort can be managed when it follows a pattern. As darkness settles over Edinburgh, the city does not resist what is coming. It prepares for it. This is perhaps the most important survival lesson hidden within the rituals of hygiene in the 1700s. You do not fight what cannot be changed. You learn to move with it. The streets grow quieter, not empty, but subdued, as if everyone shares an unspoken agreement to soften their presence. Windows close one by one, shutters drawn not just against the cold, but against attention. Inside the towering tenements, small preparations begin. Buckets are placed carefully. Candles are positioned where shadows will not deceive. The city exhales slowly. This is the hour when the meaning of Gardyloo becomes fully clear, not as a crude custom, but as a system built on trust and timing. The warning cry will come, as it always does, traveling upward through stone and air. And when it does, it will not cause panic, it will cause pause. People listen, people wait. This is sanitation in history, functioning as rhythm rather than rule. You lie back in your high room, wrapped once more in wool, hearing the muffled life of the building around you. Somewhere below, footsteps retreat indoors. Somewhere above, a voice lowers. The night belongs to release, but also to rest. You understand now that survival in old Edinburgh is not achieved by cleanliness as we define it today, but by predictability. The mind relaxes when it knows what to expect. Even discomfort becomes tolerable when it follows a pattern. Outside, the first warning echoes faintly. Gardyloo. It is not loud, not dramatic, just clear enough to carry. The city pauses. Then life continues, briefly suspended, then resumed. This is how hygiene in the 1700s protects sleep, not by removing danger, but by announcing it. You feel no fear, only awareness. The ritual has worked again. As the night deepens, the sounds soften. Stone absorbs what it can. The streets glisten faintly, reflecting lantern light, already preparing for the work of morning. You breathe evenly, knowing that by dawn, the cycle will reset. Sanitation in history often appears harsh when judged by modern eyes, but lived from within, it reveals something gentler. People adapt. They find calm not in control, but in understanding. In Edinburgh, survival is an agreement between the city and its residents. The city promises consistency, the people promise attention. This balance allows rest.
As you drift towards sleep, you realize that the true achievement of these rituals is not cleanliness, but peace of mind. The warning has been given, the danger has passed. Tomorrow will follow the same rhythm. And so, wrapped in stone and shared habit, you sleep, knowing that even in a city without modern hygiene, order still exists, quietly, predictably, enough to let you rest. Stepping out of the narrow close feels like stepping onto the stage of an enormous theater. The sudden openness is almost disorienting. Before you stretches the Royal Mile, not merely a road, but an entire world compressed into a single mile of uneven stone. This is the spine of Old Town Edinburgh, the artery through which life flows without pause. There are no pavements to guide you, no clear boundaries between where one person should walk and another should stand. Instead, there is movement, constant and shared. People, carts, animals, all merging into a single restless current. This is Royal Mile history as it is lived, not remembered. Above you, the sky is barely visible. Thousands of chimneys rise from the buildings on either side, exhaling coal smoke that drifts low and thick, forming the cloud that earned the city its name, Old Reekie, the Old Smoky One. The air feels heavy, not threatening, but enclosing, like a blanket pulled close on a cold day. This is what makes the street feel strangely warm despite the chill. The smoke softens edges, blurs distance, and turns the world intimate. As you move forward, you blend into the flow. A woman in silk skirts glides past a fish seller whose boots are wet from the morning's work. A university professor gestures mid-argument beside a soldier standing watch, his expression calm and unchanging. This is Old Town Edinburgh at its most concentrated, where class does not separate space, only pace. Everyone moves together, adjusting instinctively, shoulders turning, steps shortening, bodies yielding just enough to pass without collision. The sound here is not sharp, but layered. Wooden clogs strike stone. Wagon wheels grind slowly. Voices rise and fall in patterns that repeat until they become soothing. This is not noise meant to alarm, but noise meant to signal that life is continuing as expected. For those learning how to survive living in 1700s Edinburgh, this soundscape becomes a guide. Silence would be unsettling. The presence of sound is reassurance. You notice how no one hurries unnecessarily. Even urgency is measured. The density of the Royal Mile demands patience. Every movement is negotiated. Every step is shared. As smoke drifts overhead, light filters down in muted tones, turning colors softer, less demanding. It is easy here to let your thoughts slow. This is why a walk along the Royal Mile can become a relaxing history walk, even amid chaos. The repetition of movement, sound, and breath lulls the mind into rhythm. You pass doorways that open into taverns, workshops, and private rooms stacked up one above another, each holding a fragment of life. Nothing feels hidden, yet nothing demands your attention for long. The city presents itself in passing glances, not confrontations. The smell of coal smoke mixes with food, leather, damp wool, and human presence, forming a scent that defines place more than time. This is survival through immersion. To live here is not to escape the crowd, but to dissolve into it. As you continue along the Royal Mile, you feel how the street absorbs individuals and releases them changed, calmer, quieter inside. The world here is compressed, but it is also predictable. And predictability, more than comfort, is what allows rest. By the time you reach the midpoint of the mile, the initial overwhelm has faded. The theater no longer feels loud, it feels steady. You are no longer watching the performance, you are part of it, moving at the pace the city sets,
breathing the smoke-softened air of Old Reekie and understanding that survival in Old Town Edinburgh depends on learning to move gently within the crowd rather than against it.
As you continue along the Royal Mile, you begin to notice how the street offers not only movement, but refuge. Doorways appear at irregular intervals, opening into taverns warmed by low fires, workshops humming with steady labor, and narrow staircases leading upward to rooms where minds work as tirelessly as hands. This is the deeper rhythm of Old Town Edinburgh, where survival is supported not just by food and caution, but by shared spaces of pause. You pass a tavern door left ajar, and a wash of warmth spills briefly onto the street, carrying with it the scent of ale, wood smoke, and voices layered in conversation. Inside, men and women gather not to escape the city, but to process it. The Royal Mile compresses the world outside, and these interiors allow it to soften. In the history of the Royal Mile, such places are anchors. They absorb excess energy, offering a slower pace without demanding silence. You do not need to enter to feel their effect. Even passing by, the hum steadies your breath. A little farther on, you notice figures clustered near a doorway, speaking quietly, their gestures measured. A university lecturer debates a point with a colleague, their words calm, deliberate, shaped by habit rather than urgency. This proximity of thought and trade is a defining feature of Old Town Edinburgh. Knowledge does not hide behind gates here. It walks alongside commerce, faith, and daily survival. Churches rise along the mile, their stone facades darkened by smoke, bells marking time in tones that cut gently through the noise. The sound does not startle, it settles. It reminds everyone moving below that the day has structure, even when the street feels overwhelming. For those seeking a relaxing history walk, this blend of sound becomes a kind of guide. You are never lost when the bells ring. They locate you within the city's breathing pattern. As the afternoon progresses, the crowd shifts but never thins. Faces change, the flow remains. Merchants adjust their stalls, musicians appear briefly, then fade. Children weave between legs, learning balance long before they learn restraint. The smoke overhead remains constant, a ceiling that lowers the sky and draws attention inward. Old Reekie earns its name again and again, not as an insult, but as a description of familiarity. The city smells like itself, and that consistency is comforting. You realize that to survive living in 1700s Edinburgh, one must learn to find calm not in isolation, but in continuity. The Royal Mile teaches this lesson slowly. Nothing here is sudden. Even conflict dissolves into movement. Arguments fade as people are carried apart by the flow. Joy does the same. Laughter rises, then merges into the general sound. The street does not amplify emotion, it absorbs it. This is why the mile can feel strangely soothing despite its density. As evening approaches, lanterns are lit, their glow catching smoke and stone, softening edges further. The light does not pierce the haze, it settles into it. You walk more slowly now, not because you are tired, but because the city invites it. The pace is set not by desire, but by space. In this way, the Royal Mile becomes a teacher. It shows you that survival in Old Town Edinburgh is not about carving out silence, but about allowing sound to become background. It is about letting the crowd carry part of your weight. As you near another close branching off the main road, you feel the transition approaching. The mile has given you warmth, noise, and reassurance. The quieter paths will offer something else. But for now, you remain within the dense comfort of the crowd, breathing smoke-softened air, listening to voices blur into calm, and understanding that in Old Reekie, even congestion can feel like shelter. As evening settles over the Royal Mile, the great theater begins to soften its performance. The crowd does not disappear, but it changes tone, like music shifting into a slower movement. Lanterns are lit one by one, their warm glow catching on stone and smoke, turning the street into a corridor of amber light. This is Royal Mile history at its most intimate, when the mile no longer overwhelms, but gently holds those who remain within it. The coal smoke thickens overhead, lowering the sky even further, and Old Riki earns its name once again. The smell is familiar now, no longer sharp, but reassuring in its consistency. You walk more slowly, guided less by destination and more by rhythm. This is what transforms the street into a relaxing history walk, even at its busiest. The repetition of footsteps, the steady roll of carts returning home, the muted conversations drifting past, all blend into a single calming presence. Faces you passed earlier reappear, not recognized individually, but as part of a pattern. The Royal Mile teaches survival through familiarity. Nothing here surprises you anymore. That is its gift. Shops close gradually, shutters sliding into place without urgency. Taverns glow brighter from within, becoming islands of warmth against the cool night air. Laughter escapes briefly and fades, absorbed by smoke and stone. Bells ring again, softer this time, marking not the hour of work, but the approach of rest. In Old Town Edinburgh, the day does not end abruptly, it dissolves. You feel the pull toward the closes, the narrow veins branching away from the mile, leading back to vertical homes stacked in shadow. Leaving the main road feels like stepping off stage, but without relief or tension. The quiet is not empty, it is dense, layered with echoes of the day. You turn into a close and the sound of the Royal Mile dims behind you, replaced by footsteps and breath. The smoke lingers even here, clinging to walls, wrapping the city in a shared memory. As you climb the familiar stairs toward your room, lantern light flickers through small windows, guiding rather than illuminating. This ascent feels different now. Your body is tired, but your mind is calm. The Royal Mile has done its work. It has absorbed your attention, carried your thoughts outward, and returned them softened. Survival in Old Town Edinburgh depends on this daily cycle. Exposure followed by retreat, noise followed by quiet. The city never fully rests, but it allows you to. When you reach your door, the sounds below are distant, muffled by height and stone. You close yourself in, not to escape the city, but to complete the rhythm it began. Outside, the Royal Mile continues its slow breathing under smoke and lantern light. Inside, you lie down, knowing that tomorrow the same mile of stone will welcome you again, unchanged, predictable, and ready to hold another day. This is how people survive living in 1700s Edinburgh, not by conquering the crowd, but by letting it pass through them day after day, until even the busiest street becomes a familiar path back to rest.
Hunger arrives quietly in Old Edinburgh. It does not rush you, but it reminds you that survival is always practical before it is dramatic. As your stomach tightens, your steps turn naturally toward the Luckenbooths, the dense ring of market stalls and shops clustered around St. Giles Cathedral. This is where daily life history becomes tangible, measured not in events, but in meals secured and risks avoided. Survival here is not only about escaping disease, it is about knowing which vendor will not sell you moldy oats or watered ale. The market hums with a steady energy, neither chaotic nor calm, but purposeful. Stalls press close together, canvas and wood brushing stone walls darkened by smoke. Voices call out softly, not to overwhelm, but to be remembered. In the history of medieval markets, this closeness is intentional. Trust is built through repetition. You see the same hands, the same faces, day after day. Food in 1700s Scotland is simple, repetitive, and unforgiving of mistakes. Oats dominate everything. They appear as porridge, as bannocks, as rough cakes wrapped in cloth. Oats last. Oats travel. Oats forgive little in return. You know how they should smell, how they should look. A careless purchase can mean illness or worse. You pause before a familiar stall, watching how the vendor moves. Experience has taught you that attention is protection. Behind the oats, barrels of ale sit ready. You are thirsty, but you will not draw water from the public well. Everyone knows better. Water carries risk you cannot see. Instead, you ask for small beer, a lightly brewed ale with low alcohol, safe even for children. This choice defines daily life history more than any grand story. The brewing process kills what water cannot. The taste is thin, faintly bitter, but reliable. You lift the cup and feel its warmth steady you. In food in 1700s Scotland, safety matters more than pleasure. Around you, others make the same decisions. Mothers pass cups to children without hesitation. Workers drink slowly, not to escape, but to continue. The market is not indulgent, it is instructional. Every transaction teaches restraint. You exchange coins carefully, aware that waste today means hunger tomorrow. The smell of cooked oats drifts through the air, mingling with damp stone and smoke. It is not inviting in a modern sense, but it is comforting in its consistency. Medieval market history often focuses on spectacle, but here survival hides in the ordinary. No one lingers longer than necessary. You eat standing, spoons scraping quietly against a wooden bowl. The warmth spreads, dulling hunger without excitement. That is enough. You observe how vendors guard their reputation more fiercely than their goods. A single mistake can end trade. This is how trust regulates the market when law cannot. As you finish, you feel neither full nor deprived. You feel prepared. The market has done its job. It has not offered abundance, but continuity. You step away from the Luckenbooths knowing that tomorrow will look much the same, and that sameness is what keeps you alive. Survival here is not heroic. It is careful. It is repeated. And it begins every day with oats, ale, and the quiet knowledge of whom to trust.
Thirst, like hunger, teaches you quickly in 1700s Edinburgh. It teaches you what not to trust. Water, clear to the eye, is never clear in promise. Wells sit open to the street, exposed to runoff, waste, and the simple density of too many lives pressed too closely together. No one needs a lesson to understand this. Illness has already done the teaching. This is why small beer becomes central to daily life history, not as indulgence, but as precaution. Brewed lightly, consumed widely, it replaces water not because it intoxicates, but because it protects. In the medieval market history of Scotland, this choice is not debated, it is inherited. You watch children drink from small wooden cups, their faces calm, their bodies accustomed to the taste. There is no ceremony, no celebration. The drink is thin, faintly sour, barely bitter, but it is warm, and warmth matters. Brewing requires heat, and heat brings safety. This quiet logic shapes food in 1700s Scotland more than any recipe. Mothers dilute it further for the youngest. Workers sip it steadily throughout the day. No one rushes. The purpose is continuation, not escape. You notice how vendors handle their barrels with care, guarding consistency.
A spoiled batch would not only lose customers, it would end trust. In a market like Luckenbooths, reputation feeds families as surely as oats. The presence of small beer changes the rhythm of the day. People pause together, cups in hand, conversations softening as bodies settle. Hydration becomes social, predictable, and safe. This is survival built into routine. You taste it again, noticing how it leaves no sharp edge behind. The bitterness fades quickly, replaced by steadiness. In modern eyes, this practice seems strange. In lived reality, it is compassionate. Children grow without constant sickness. Adults work without fear of sudden collapse. This is daily life history shaped by necessity rather than choice. As the afternoon advances, the market adjusts. Sunlight shifts across St. Giles' Stone, and shadows lengthen around the stalls. Vendors restock oats, tighten cloth coverings, and exchange brief words. The cycle continues. You understand now that food in 1700s Scotland is less about nourishment alone and more about managing risk. Every bite and sip is weighed quietly against consequence. The small beer in your hand represents an agreement between knowledge and habit. It is not perfect, but it is sufficient, and sufficiency is survival. As you move away from the market, cup returned, hunger eased, thirst settled, you carry with you not satisfaction, but reassurance. The city has offered what it can without harm. That is enough. In Edinburgh, people do not seek purity, they seek predictability. And in that predictability, life continues, day after day, without drama, without pause. As the day draws toward its quieter hours, food becomes less about choice and more about closure. In 1700s Edinburgh, the evening meal does not surprise you, it reassures you. The same oats that sustained the morning return again, softened by heat, thickened slowly, stirred without hurry. This repetition is not failure of imagination, it is a strategy. In daily life history, sameness often means safety. You prepare what you know will not harm you. The market has already taught its lessons, now the home applies them. The bowl warms your hands as much as your body. Steam rises gently, carrying a familiar scent that signals rest rather than hunger. Food in 1700s Scotland is not designed to excite the senses, it is designed to quiet them. You eat slowly, not because there is abundance, but because speed offers no advantage. Around you, the building settles. Sounds soften as neighbors do the same, spoons tapping wood, small movements echoing faintly through stone. Somewhere above, a child laughs briefly. Somewhere below, a voice hums. These sounds are not interruptions, they are confirmations. Everyone is following the same rhythm. Small beer appears again, not as refreshment, but as companion to the meal. Its warmth supports digestion. Its familiarity signals the end of the day's risks. This is medieval market history extending into the private sphere. The same logic governs both spaces. What works outside must work within. You drink, feeling steadiness spread rather than stimulation. The mind begins to loosen its grip on vigilance. The city has already tested you enough today. Now it allows recovery. You think briefly of how modern eyes might judge this life as dull, but dullness here is protection. Variety introduces uncertainty. Uncertainty invites danger. Survival favors the predictable. As you finish eating, there is no rush to clean. Cleanliness has already been addressed earlier through timing and habit. You wipe what must be wiped, cover what must be covered, and leave the rest to morning. This acceptance is part of hygiene in the lived sense.
The goal is not perfection, but continuity. Food in 1700s Scotland ends the day the same way it began, grounding the body so the mind can rest. Outside, the city exhales. The Royal Mile dims. The market's empty. But the nourishment of the day remains with you, quiet and reliable. You lie back, stomach settled, thirst gone, senses dulled just enough to allow sleep. In this moment, survival feels almost gentle. The oats have done their work. The beer has done its part. The repetition has created a boundary between day and night. This is how people endure, not through abundance, but through restraint, not through excitement, but through trust. Tomorrow will bring the same hunger, the same market, the same choices, and that knowledge, more than comfort, allows you to close your eyes. In the stone city of Edinburgh, survival often tastes like oats, feels like warmth, and sounds like familiar silence settling in around you. You are walking through the medical capital of Europe, and yet there is a quiet irony in every step you take. Edinburgh in the 18th century trained some of the finest physicians the world has known, but the streets beneath their classrooms remain unforgiving. The stone beneath your feet remembers sickness more clearly than theory. As you pass near the university buildings, you see young medical students moving quickly, their arms full of heavy anatomy books, their faces focused and intent. They speak of organs, of balance, of humors and cures, but their knowledge has not yet reached the damp corners of the closes you walk through. This is the tension that defines the history of medicine in Edinburgh. Great learning rises just a few streets away from great danger. The air here carries more than smoke. It carries memory. Plagues have passed through these lanes before, leaving patterns of caution behind them. People have learned to watch one another quietly. A cough in a crowd draws space. A pale face invites distance. This is plague history not as panic, but as habit. You notice how people angle their bodies slightly away from those who sound unwell, how conversations shorten, how movement becomes deliberate. No one announces fear, it is simply practiced. In a medical history sleep story, this city teaches you that survival often lies in awareness rather than intervention. You are not seeking treatment, you are avoiding the need for it. The advice you follow is simple and unspoken. Do not linger where the air feels heavy. Do not press into crowds where breath becomes shared too closely. Above all, keep warm. Cold and damp are the most persistent enemies here, more reliable than any illness. You pull your coat tighter, grateful for the thick wool that traps warmth close to your body. This small act feels protective, almost ceremonial. Around you, the city continues its lessons. You pass an alley where shadows stretch longer than the light, and for a moment you are aware of another presence, not visible, but implied. Edinburgh's darker medical reputation moves quietly here. Stories of body snatchers drift through the city like rumors that never fully fade. You do not see them, you do not need to. Their existence belongs to the margins, to the spaces between law and learning. They are part of the same system that builds surgeons and scholars. Knowledge demands bodies, and bodies, in this time, are not always given willingly. But you were safe. You were a passerby, an observer. The danger is atmospheric, not immediate. This is what makes it possible to rest within the story. The mind notes the shadow without entering it. Lamps glow faintly as evening deepens, their light catching the edges of wet stone. You feel the dampness in the air, but not inside your bones. That is the difference that matters. Survival here is not about mastering medicine, but about respecting its limits. You walk on,
calm and unhurried, letting the city reveal its contradictions. Edinburgh heals and harms in equal measure, but it rewards those who listen. By staying warm, by staying observant, by keeping your distance from suffering when you can, you remain intact. This is the quiet wisdom that threads through the history of medicine in Edinburgh. Not every danger can be cured. Some must simply be avoided. And as you continue down the street, wrapped in wool and awareness, the shadows remain behind you, present but contained, allowing the night to unfold gently.
As night deepens, the presence of medicine becomes quieter, but no less influential. You pass buildings where learning continues behind thick walls, where oil lamps burn late, illuminating sketches of bones and organs, attempts to map the human body before it reveals its secrets willingly. Edinburgh's reputation in the history of medicine rests on this hunger to understand, yet the city itself teaches restraint. Hospitals exist, but they are not places of comfort as you might imagine. They are last resorts, entered with hope, but also with acceptance. In plague history, treatment often followed desperation rather than prevention. You learn by watching that the wiser path is avoidance. The streets whisper this lesson through habit. Windows remain closed against night air. Doors are bolted early. People choose warmth over exposure, routine over curiosity. This is how a medical history sleep story remains gentle. You are never pulled inside the suffering. You remain just outside it, aware but untouched. Near the university quarter, you see figures moving carefully, carrying parcels wrapped tightly, their purpose unclear but deliberate. Knowledge travels quietly here. So do rumors. The line between healing and harm is thin, and everyone knows it. You hear no screams, no cries, only footsteps and the low murmur of conversation. Medicine in this era is intimate, experimental, uncertain. Its progress is slow, and so is its danger. This awareness shapes daily behavior. People dress in layers, not fashionably but defensively. Scarves are pulled high, hats stay on indoors. Heat is conserved like currency. The body is treated as something to guard, not test. In old Edinburgh, health is not a state you achieve, but a balance you maintain. The shadow of disease moves alongside the promise of cure, and neither is allowed to dominate your thoughts. Lamps flicker as you move past another close, casting long shapes on stone. For a moment, the idea of body snatchers returns, not as fear but as context. They belong to the same quiet system of need and innovation. They are not monsters here. They are symptoms of a time when knowledge advanced faster than ethics. And still you walk calmly. You are not involved. You are protected by distance and by time. This is what allows the story to soothe rather than disturb. The city never demands that you participate. It only asks that you observe. As you turn back toward home, the air feels cooler but stable. The danger is known, and what is known can be managed. You reflect that survival in 1700s Edinburgh is less about bravery and more about discipline, avoiding crowds, keeping warm, respecting boundaries between health and sickness. These habits, repeated nightly, form a shield more reliable than any physician's promise. Medicine advances slowly, but routine advances daily. By the time you reach your door, the lessons of the city have settled into your body like heat from wool. The shadows of medicine remain outside, present but contained. Inside, there is quiet, and quiet is the beginning of rest. By the time the city settles fully into night, medicine releases its hold on your thoughts. Edinburgh does not sleep deeply, but it sleeps enough. Lamps dim, conversations thin. The careful vigilance of the day gives way to something gentler.
This is the moment when survival becomes passive rather than active. You are no longer avoiding crowds or watching faces. You are resting. In the history of medicine in Edinburgh, rest is rarely celebrated, yet it is the most reliable protection people possess. Before antibiotics, before certainty, the body heals itself best when it is warm, still, and uninterrupted. You prepare for sleep with the same quiet discipline that guided your day. Wool layers remain close. The room is small, but it holds heat. Stone walls release warmth slowly, returning what they absorbed during daylight. This exchange creates a steady calm. Outside, the shadows of plague history linger only as memory. Inside, they lose their power. You lie down knowing that sickness often arrives through exhaustion as much as exposure. Sleep is not escape, it is strategy. The city understands this instinctively. Bells will ring again tomorrow. Doctors will teach. Students will study. Body snatchers will remain stories whispered at a distance. But for now, none of that reaches you. This is the gift of night in old Edinburgh. Medicine recedes, observation ends, the body takes over. Breathing slows, muscles soften. The careful habits you practice today continue without effort. Warmth stays in place, distance is maintained, nothing presses in. In a medical history sleep story, this is where fear dissolves into routine. You are not cured, you are preserved, and preservation is enough. As sleep deepens, the city fades into background presence, no longer demanding attention. The stone streets, the universities, the hospitals, the rumors, all drift into quiet alignment. You are safe not because danger is gone, but because you have stepped beyond its reach for the night. This is how people survive living in 1700s Edinburgh, not through constant vigilance, but through knowing when to let go. Rest becomes the final medicine, administered gently, night after night, until morning returns.
When the wind from the Firth of Forth begins to bite, it does not announce itself loudly. It slips under collars, creeps through seams, and reminds you that stone remembers cold far longer than it remembers warmth. You walk faster now, shoulders slightly raised, breath visible in short clouds. Then you see it, a spill of golden light cutting through the blue-gray dusk, escaping from beneath a tavern door. This is not temptation, it is refuge. You push the door inward, and the city releases you. Heat presses gently against your face, carrying with it the scent of burning wood, damp wool drying slowly, and faint tobacco smoke curling lazily toward low beams. The ceiling is close, intentionally so. It holds warmth the way hands cup a flame. This is the living room of Edinburgh. Inside, the world compresses again, but this time softly. Long wooden benches line the walls, filled with bodies leaned shoulder to shoulder, not from crowding, but from comfort. This is social life in the 18th century at its most human. No one performs, no one isolates. Conversation moves in low waves, a steady murmur that never spikes, never falls silent. Glasses touch wood, spoons tap bowls, fire crackles. These sounds layer into a Scottish tavern ambiance that asks nothing from you except presence. You find a corner where the wall still holds the day's heat. Someone shifts to make space without words. You sit. A bowl of soup arrives, thick and steaming, placed carefully without flourish. You wrap your hands around it and feel the slow return of circulation. This warmth does not rush, it persuades. Around you, faces glow softly, reddened by fire and ale, eyes half-lidded, not with intoxication, but with ease. This is the golden age of conversation, but not of argument. Philosophers sit near craftsmen, students near sailors. Ideas drift, not collide. You hear fragments rather than statements, a thought about reason, a story about weather, a quiet laugh that dissolves back into the hum. No one seeks the last word here. The tavern does not reward sharpness, it rewards continuity. In a cozy history story, this is where the city's edges soften. Outside, Edinburgh is vertical, crowded, vigilant. Inside, it becomes horizontal, shared, forgiving. You sip slowly, noticing how the heat settles deeper than clothing ever could. The firelight flickers, casting shadows that move gently, never sharply. Time stretches. The body relaxes before the mind realizes it is safe. This is survival of a different kind. Not avoidance, not discipline, but belonging. In the tavern, you do not need to watch your back or measure distance. The crowd here protects you by inclusion. As the wind continues outside, unheard now, the tavern absorbs it, translating cold into stories, hunger into soup, fatigue into rest. You lean back slightly, letting the bench support you. Nothing presses, nothing demands. This is how people endure winter, fear, and fatigue in 1700s Edinburgh. They step into the light, sit among others, and allow warmth, sound, and shared silence to carry them gently toward night.
As the evening deepens inside the tavern, conversation becomes the fire's quiet companion. Words are exchanged not to persuade, but to pass time gently, like embers shared from hand to hand. This is the social life of the 18th century at its most subtle. You sit close enough to hear fragments without obligation. A thought about human nature drifts by. A question about trade lingers unanswered and then dissolves. No one demands clarity. In this room, ideas are allowed to remain unfinished. The low ceiling gathers warmth and sound together, creating a Scottish tavern ambiance that softens edges and blurs urgency. You notice how voices rarely rise. When they do, they quickly return to the common hum, absorbed by wood, wool, and smoke. This is not debate as performance, it is conversation as rest. Nearby, a pair of scholars speak in calm tones, their words shaped by habit rather than ambition. They are not famous here, even if their ideas will one day be. In the tavern, reputation matters less than presence. A sailor listens with interest, nodding slowly, contributing a short story about the sea that adds texture rather than direction. This balance is what makes the space feel safe. No one owns the room. Everyone belongs to it. You feel your breathing align with the rhythm around you. The clink of a spoon against a bowl becomes predictable. The crackle of the fire repeats at comfortable intervals. Time stretches without thinning. In a cozy history story, this is where the city teaches its final lesson of the day. Survival is not only about warmth and food, but about shared calm. The body relaxes when it recognizes pattern. The mind loosens when it is not required to decide. You sip slowly, feeling the heat settle deeper. The bench supports your weight evenly. Shoulders drop.
Outside, the wind continues its work, but it no longer matters. Inside, the tavern translates cold into conversation and isolation into company. You realize that this is how ideas survived as much as people did. Knowledge moved not only through books and lectures, but through evenings like this, where words were carried gently, unforced, from one listener to another. The social fabric thickens here, stitched by repetition and trust. No one rushes to leave, no one watches the door. The night feels held. As fatigue arrives, it does so kindly, encouraged by warmth and sound. Your thoughts slow, drifting in and out of the surrounding talk without anchoring. This is the ideal moment. Not silence, but softness. Not solitude, but ease. The golden age of conversation is not loud. It is low, steady, and continuous, and it carries you almost unnoticed toward rest.
Eventually, without announcement, the tavern begins to release you. No bell rings, no voice calls for last orders. The change arrives as a feeling rather than an event. Conversations thin naturally, laughter softens, the fire settles into a quieter rhythm. You realize you have been warm for long enough that you no longer think about the cold. That is how the refuge works. It prepares you to leave without fear. You rise slowly, joints responding calmly, body still holding the heat gathered inside. Coats are lifted, scarves adjusted, movements unhurried. The door opens, and the night waits patiently. When you step outside, the contrast is gentle rather than sharp. The cold meets you, but it does not shock. The warmth travels with you, layered into wool in breath. Behind you, the tavern door closes, sealing in its glow, but not its effect. The Scottish tavern ambiance lingers in your ears as a memory of sound, a low hum that continues even in silence. The street is darker now. Lanterns mark distance rather than illuminate detail. Shadows stretch across stone, familiar rather than threatening. This is the threshold moment where social life gives way to solitude, not abruptly, but respectfully. You walk with measured steps, aware of the uneven ground, but unafraid. Inside you, calm has replaced vigilance. This is how the city intends it. The tavern does not erase the night. It teaches you how to enter it. As you move away, you notice other figures doing the same, drifting outward from pockets of light, each carrying a small reserve of warmth. No one rushes, no one lingers too long. The rhythm is shared even in departure. This is the final lesson of social life in the 18th century. Togetherness prepares you for being alone. The wind moves through the street, quieter now, brushing rather than biting. Somewhere, a door closes softly. Somewhere else, footsteps echo briefly, then fade. The city does not sleep, but it lowers its voice. You feel the night settle around you like a cloak, heavy but protective. This is where one chapter ends. Ahead lies a different landscape, shaped by darkness rather than light, by caution rather than conversation. You take one more steady breath, letting the last traces of fire and voices settle into memory. The tavern has done its work. It has warmed you, slowed you, and returned you gently to the streets. As you continue forward, the light behind you diminishes, and the darkness ahead grows softer, not empty, but waiting. This is how darkness falls in old Edinburgh. Not suddenly, but patiently.
inviting you onward.
When the gun fires from the castle, it does not echo loudly for long. The sound travels, then disappears, as if absorbed by the night itself. This is the signal everyone understands. Darkness has arrived. In old Edinburgh, night does not fade in gently. It takes the city all at once. The Royal Mile, so alive hours earlier, seems to fall into a black hollow, its shape remembered more by memory than by sight. There are no street lamps to soften the transition. Only small points of light remain, scattered and fragile. The moon offers little help, its reflection broken by wet stone and uneven ground. This is night in old Edinburgh as it truly was, complete and unfiltered. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes adjust, letting the world narrow. Sound becomes more important than vision now. Your own breath is louder. Your footsteps feel heavier. Somewhere ahead, a lantern moves slowly, carried by a caudie, a hired guide who knows these streets by heart. The light sways gently, like a firefly, marking safe passage through darkness. You follow at a respectful distance, not close enough to intrude, not far enough to lose sight. This balance is survival. In history at night, caution replaces confidence. The city no longer invites wandering, it encourages return. As you move, the Royal Mile reveals itself only in fragments. A doorway appears, then vanishes. A wall looms, then recedes. The darkness does not rush you, but it does not wait either. It presses softly, urging you forward. This is where ASMR history begins to work on the mind. The absence of light sharpens rhythm. Footsteps echo briefly, then are swallowed. Wind moves through stone channels, producing a low, steady breath that feels almost intentional. The noise of day has dissolved completely. What remains is space. You walk more carefully now, feeling the ground through your soles, trusting familiarity over sight. Everyone around you does the same. Figures pass silently, their outlines barely visible, their presence known only by motion and sound. No one speaks unless necessary. Words carry too far at night. The city prefers quiet. Lantern light passes across your path, then moves on, leaving darkness intact. You realize that this darkness is not empty. It is full of boundaries. It tells you where not to go. It teaches you to stay close to walls, to avoid open intersections, to keep moving steadily. Survival here is not about bravery. It is about rhythm. Step, pause, step. Breath, listen, continue. The darkness becomes a guide rather than a threat. As you near the closes that lead home, the soundscape narrows further. Wind fades, footsteps thin. The city seems to fold inward. This is the moment when night fully takes hold, when old Edinburgh stops performing and begins resting. You feel yourself slow, not from fear, but from alignment. The dark has done its work. It has removed distraction, reduced the world to essentials. Ahead, the caudie's lantern turns a corner and disappears. You continue alone now, but not lost. The route is known. The darkness holds you gently, allowing the mind to loosen its grip. This is how the night welcomes you, not with danger, but with quiet, steady containment, leading you deeper into rest.
Now that the lantern has vanished, the street feels wider and quieter, as if the darkness has stepped closer. You adjust without thinking. Your pace finds a slower rhythm, measured and steady, shaped by instinct rather than intention. This is how people learn to move at night in old Edinburgh. Vision retreats, and other senses rise gently to take its place. The sound of your boots against stone becomes a guide. Each step confirms the ground beneath you, mapping the street one footfall at a time. The air feels colder now, but also cleaner, stripped of the warmth and voices left behind. In this hour, history at night reveals itself not through events, but through sensations. A faint drip echoes from somewhere unseen. The wind traces familiar paths between buildings, producing a low, continuous murmur that settles the mind. This is ASMR history in its purest form, where repetition replaces narration. You keep close to the wall, fingers brushing rough stone occasionally, reassuring yourself of direction. Open spaces feel larger in the dark, so you pass them quickly, returning to the safety of narrow closes where sound behaves predictably. Shadows layer themselves quietly, never sudden, never sharp. You notice how the city has taught you this without words. Everyone who has walked these streets before has learned the same lessons, passing them down through habit rather than instruction. The night does not need explaining, it simply asks for attention. Your breathing slows, matching your steps. Inhale, exhale, step. Inhale, exhale, step. The pattern repeats until thought itself begins to soften. You are no longer evaluating the darkness, you are moving with it. Somewhere behind you, a distant door closes. Far ahead, another footstep echoes briefly, then dissolves. These sounds do not interrupt, they confirm continuity. You are not alone, but you are separate, and that separation feels peaceful. The moon shifts behind clouds, offering a brief change in contrast, then withdrawing again. Light is not required, memory fills the gaps. You know where the street bends, you remember where the stones dip. Familiarity carries you forward more reliably than sight ever could. This is the secret of surviving the night. Not force, not speed, but trust in repetition. As you approach your own close, the darkness seems to thicken, not as a barrier, but as a cushion. The city's edges blur further, the sounds grow fewer. Even the wind quiets, as if respecting the hour. You slow again, allowing the body to finish its descent into calm. The mind, freed from choice and urgency, begins to drift. Thoughts arrive without weight and leave without trace. The night has narrowed your world to the essential path home. Everything else has fallen away. You pause briefly at the entrance, listening, feeling the stillness settle completely. This is not an ending, it is a deepening. Darkness does not close the day, it opens rest. You step inside, carrying with you the steady rhythm learned outside, and the city, satisfied, lets you go.
The final stretch of the walk feels shorter than expected. Darkness has compressed distance, folding the city inward until only what matters remains. Your close appears not as a shape, but as a familiar absence of light, a narrow opening where sound behaves differently. You slow instinctively, listening one last time to the street behind you. Nothing follows. The night has done its work and now releases you. You step inside the close, and the world changes again. The walls rise close on either side, blocking even the faint glow of moonlight. Here, the darkness is complete, yet calm. Your hand finds the stone railing by memory, guiding you upward. Each step echoes softly, contained, predictable. This is not the darkness of exposure, but of shelter. Outside, the city continues its quiet breathing, but it no longer concerns you. You have crossed the threshold. As you reach your door, the routine unfolds without thought. Key turns. Wood shifts. The lock settles with a muted sound that signals safety. Inside, the air is still. Cold lingers, but it is familiar, domestic, no longer demanding attention. You close the door behind you, and with that simple motion, old Edinburgh recedes completely. The night outside remains vast and dark, but it is now separate. Here, the darkness becomes smaller, gentler, shaped by walls and low ceilings. You remove your coat slowly, feeling the last traces of warmth fade without urgency. The body understands this moment. Survival for the day is complete. There is nothing left to anticipate. You move through the room by touch, placing items where they always belong. The repetition is comforting. The mind no longer scans, it settles. This is where history at night dissolves into rest. The city's lessons end not with instruction, but with permission. Permission to stop watching. Permission to stop listening outward. The darkness inside the room feels different from the streets. It does not guide or warn, it simply holds. You sit, then lie down, the surface beneath you firm and known. Breath slows further, unmeasured now, no longer matched to steps. Silence deepens, but it is not empty. It is full of what has been left behind. The tavern's warmth, the street's rhythm, the lantern's brief glow. All of it fades into a single, steady calm. This is how the return to rest begins, not abruptly, but as a continuation of the night's work. Old Edinburgh does not lull you with comfort. It leads you there through structure and routine, through darkness that narrows the world until sleep becomes inevitable. Outside, the city remains unseen. Inside, rest takes shape. You do not need to think about tomorrow. Morning will arrive when it does. For now, the night completes itself, and you follow, gently, into sleep.
The climb back up the stone stair feels longer than it did earlier, not because it truly is, but because the body now recognizes its destination. Each step carries the promise of rest, drawing you upward with a quiet certainty. The spiral narrows as you ascend, stone curving inward, sound dampening with every turn. Your hand trails the wall, cool and familiar, guiding you without thought. This is the final movement of the day, one learned through repetition rather than effort. At the top, your room waits in darkness, patient and unchanged. The fire in the hearth has faded to embers, glowing softly like distant stars. They offer no heat worth measuring, but their presence is reassuring. You close the door gently, sealing the night outside. The air inside feels still, protected, as if the room itself has been holding its breath. This is where sleeping habits history becomes personal, no longer an idea, but a practice. You move slowly, unhurried, changing layers, preparing the body for enclosure. In the corner stands the box bed, solid and quiet, more furniture than invitation, yet unmistakably comforting. Its wooden panels hold generations of warmth, its design shaped by necessity and care. In box bed history, this was not luxury, but survival made gentle. You open the small door and step inside, the space immediately narrowing around you. The world reduces to a rectangle of wood and shadow. You pull the door closed, and the sound is soft, final. Cold and noise are left outside, excluded by design. Inside, the air warms quickly, held close. The scent of straw and old wool settles around you, earthy and familiar, grounding the senses. The mattress supports you firmly, no sinking, no sway. This bed does not cradle dreams, it contains them. As you lie back, the ceiling inches above your face, you feel held rather than confined. The smallness is intentional. It gathers heat,
quiet and thought into one manageable space. This is the ultimate cozy ending, not decorative, but deeply functional. Here, Sleeping Habits' history reveals its wisdom. Sleep was not about openness or softness, but about protection. The body responds immediately. Shoulders drop, jaw loosens, breath deepens without instruction. You listen briefly to the faint sounds of the building, the stones settling, the city breathing far below. None of it reaches you fully. The box bed filters the world, allowing only what is harmless to remain. This is how people slept through long winters in crowded cities, through noise and cold and uncertainty. They closed a door and made night smaller. You feel the day release its grip, piece by piece. There is no need to review, no need to plan. Survival has already been achieved. The bed does not ask for reflection, it asks for stillness. Warmth builds gently, evenly. Thoughts slow, arriving farther apart. The embers in the hearth dim further, unnoticed. The room fades, the city fades. What remains is breath, steady and deep, and the quiet certainty that you are safe. This is not an escape, it is a return to rest, shaped by wood and habit and time. The box bed closes the story the way it closed each night in old Edinburgh, by gathering the world into silence and letting sleep arrive naturally.
Inside the box bed, warmth gathers quietly, not as a rush, but as a steady accumulation. The wooden panels do not trap heat aggressively, they simply refuse to let it escape. This is the logic behind Sleeping Habits' history, learned long before insulation and central fires. The air becomes softly dense, holding your breath close, returning it to you unchanged. Each inhale feels complete. Each exhale leaves without effort. The body recognizes this balance immediately. Muscles that remained alert throughout the day now loosen without instruction. The hands relax, fingers curling naturally. Feet, once cold from stone streets, begin to warm from within. This is the moment when the box bed history reveals its quiet genius. By limiting space, it limits demand. There is nothing to scan, nothing to adjust. The walls are close enough to reassure, far enough to allow ease. You shift slightly, not to find comfort, but to confirm it is already there. The mattress responds evenly, offering resistance rather than softness. In this era, sleep is not about sinking, it is about being supported. The mind begins to mirror the body's simplicity. Thoughts arrive slowly, incomplete, and drift away before forming edges. Memory loosens its grip. The day no longer presents itself as a sequence, it dissolves into sensations without story. Outside, old Edinburgh remains awake in its own way, but it no longer reaches you. The city has been reduced to a distant presence, filtered through stone and wood. Even sound behaves differently here. Footsteps above or below become muted impressions rather than interruptions. The wind, once a voice, is now a suggestion. This narrowing of stimulus is intentional. Cozy sleep ending does not come from indulgence, but from subtraction. Less light, less sound, less space, less choice. The box bed removes excess gently until only what is necessary for rest remains. You notice how the breath slows further, no longer counted, no longer guided. It finds its own rhythm, deep and regular. The chest rises and falls with certainty. The body trusts this enclosure. It has learned over generations that this shape
means safety. In sleeping habits history, fear was not argued away, it was managed through design. Wood closes, doors latch, space tightens, warmth stays, sleep follows. Your eyelids grow heavy, not suddenly, but as if weighted by calm. The darkness inside the bed is complete, yet it does not feel empty. It feels full of stillness. Time stretches again, but now without direction. There is no next step, no further movement required. Even awareness begins to soften at the edges. The box bed does not demand sleep, it allows it. Thoughts slow to fragments, sensations blur into one another. Breath, warmth, and silence merge into a single field. This is where rest deepens naturally, where the story no longer needs telling. The final work of the day is done. The body knows what comes next, and it moves there on its own, carried by warmth that holds and darkness that protects.
At this point, there is nothing left to do. The body has reached the place it was moving toward all day without knowing it. Inside the box bed, stillness becomes complete. The last edges of awareness soften, no longer sharp enough to hold onto thought. Breath moves slowly now, deeper than before, arriving and leaving without effort. You are no longer guiding it. It carries itself. This is where sleeping habits history quietly fulfills its purpose. Sleep was never forced. It was invited through routine, through enclosure, through warmth that stayed constant long enough for the body to trust it. The wood around you holds its temperature. The darkness holds its shape. Nothing changes quickly here. Time stretches until it loses meaning. The mind stops marking moments. Thoughts, if they appear at all, are distant and unfinished, like echoes from another room. They fade before they can ask for attention. This is the final gift of the box bed history. By reducing the world to something manageable, it allows the mind to let go completely. There is no light to react to, no sound that demands interpretation. Even the sense of space has narrowed to comfort. The body sinks not downward, but inward, settling into itself. Muscles release in small waves, unnoticed but thorough. The jaw loosens further. The forehead smooths. The eyes rest heavily behind closed lids. Outside, the city continues its slow, unseen movement, but it no longer belongs to you. Old Edinburgh remains, built of stone and shadow, but here, within wood and wool, none of it reaches you. Survival is complete. The day has closed. The night has done its work. You do not drift into sleep. Sleep arrives and takes its place, gently, confidently, as if it has always been waiting just beyond the last breath you noticed. The box bed becomes less an object and more a condition. Warmth, darkness, silence. These are no longer surroundings. They are the state you were in. There is nothing left to imagine, nothing left to follow. The story ends not with an ending, but with disappearance. The world fades without resistance. And in that fading, rest becomes absolute.